Happy Days may have redefined the American sitcom, but behind Ron Howard's wholesome charm and the comforting laughter of a 1950s dream stood a cast marked by heartbreak, silence, and tragedy. Fame did not save them. In many cases, it quietly isolated them. What looked like endless success on television slowly turned into emotional weight, fading relevance, and lives shadowed by pressure that no studio audience ever saw. While the show promised stability, nostalgia, and joy, reality delivered something far darker. Nearly 50 years later, the smiling faces that once filled living rooms across America tell stories of careers that collapsed, identities that fractured, and lives that ended far from the applause. Some were swallowed by the industry that celebrated them. Others survived success only to face devastating personal battles once the cameras stopped rolling. These are not stories of failure on screen, but of survival off it. And once you hear what truly happened to the stars of Happy Days, you will never watch this classic the same way again. Ronald William Howard was born on March 1, 1954 in Duncan, Oklahoma. He was just 19 years old when he stepped into the role of Richie Cunningham, the moral heart of Happy Days, a clean-cut, responsible teenager meant to represent idealized American values. By the time the series premiered in 1974, Howard was already a veteran of television, having grown up in front of the camera on The Andy Griffith Show. Unlike many young actors, he entered Happy Days with experience, discipline, and an image carefully shaped since childhood. But behind Richie's reassuring smile was a young man who had never known a normal life. Howard's childhood had been structured by studios, scripts, and expectations rather than freedom. While his peers experimented with identity, he carried the constant pressure of being dependable, polite, and marketable. Fame did not arrive suddenly for him. It never left. That continuity created its own silent burden. There was no escape from performance, no reset button, only the slow realization that the role defining his success might also trap him permanently. As the years passed and Happy Days grew into a cultural juggernaut, Howard faced a quiet crossroads. Remaining Richie Cunningham promised security and admiration, but it also threatened stagnation. Through the late 1970s, he became increasingly aware that Hollywood rarely allowed former child stars to reinvent themselves. The industry that had celebrated his reliability could just as easily discard him once youth faded. Rather than wait for decline, Howard made a risky decision. He walked away from the show in 1980 at the height of its popularity. That decision came with fear, uncertainty, and years of professional struggle. Transitioning into directing meant starting over, facing rejection, and being underestimated. Yet his escape from the child star curse came at the cost of immense pressure and personal sacrifice. Howard survived, but his story remains marked by a lifelong loss of anonymity, a childhood traded for success, and the quiet weight of growing up under constant observation. Henry Franklin Winkler was born on October 30th, 1945 in New York City. He was 28 years old when he took on the role of Arthur Fonzie Fonzarelli, a leather-jacketed outsider whose confidence and rebellion reshaped Happy Days and unexpectedly turned him into one of the most recognizable characters in television history. At the time, Winkler was a struggling actor, facing repeated rejection and doubting whether he would ever succeed in Hollywood. Yet beneath Fonzie's effortless cool lived a man battling deep personal struggles. Winkler had lived his entire life with undiagnosed dyslexia, enduring academic humiliation, low self-esteem, and constant feelings of inadequacy. Even as fame arrived, those internal wounds remained untreated. The applause could not quiet the voice telling him he was not good enough. While audiences saw power and confidence, Winkler carried the weight of insecurity into every performance. As Happy Days progressed, Fonzie grew larger than the show itself. That success became a cruel twist. Casting directors could no longer see Henry Winkler, only Fonzie. When the series ended, Hollywood quietly closed its doors. Roles vanished, scripts stopped coming. The industry that celebrated him offered little help once his image became a limitation rather than an asset. Through the 1980s, Winkler faced years of professional invisibility, watching opportunities slip away while his fame remained frozen in the past. This slow decline was emotionally devastating. Winkler questioned his worth, his talent, and his future. It took decades for him to rebuild his career as a producer, author, and advocate for learning disabilities. His story is a tragic irony, one of television's most confident characters masking a life shaped by doubt, rejection, and the long shadow of a role that nearly erased the man behind it. Erin Marie Moran was born on October 18, 1960 in Burbank, California. She was only 14 years old when she became Joni Cunningham, the youngest member of the Cunningham family and one of the emotional anchors of Happy Days. At that age, Moran was a bright, energetic child actress whose future seemed secure, protected by a hit show and nationwide affection. But behind Joni's cheerful presence was a fragile foundation. Moran's family life was unstable, and financial safeguards common today were largely absent during the 1970s. As a child, she worked long hours without the emotional or financial protection needed to transition safely into adulthood. Fame arrived early, but guidance did not. When Happy Days ended, the structure that had defined her life disappeared overnight. As the years passed, Moran struggled to find her place in an industry that had moved on. Acting offers dwindled, then stopped. Attempts at revivals failed, and financial instability followed. Through the 1990s and 2000s, her life entered a heartbreaking decline marked by health problems, housing insecurity, and public humiliation. Rather than support, she received ridicule, becoming a cautionary headline instead of a human being in pain. Erin Moran died on April 22, 2017 at the age of 56 from complications related to cancer. Her death carried a devastating irony. A woman who grew up making millions smile spent her final years forgotten by the very system that profited from her childhood. Her story remains one of the most tragic examples of how fame can arrive early, leave suddenly, and destroy those left unprepared for life without it. Thomas Edward Bosley was born on October 1, 1927 in Chicago, Illinois. He was 46 years old when he stepped into the role of Howard Cunningham, the steady, hard-working father figure of Happy Days, a character meant to represent stability, morality, and the reassuring presence of post-war America. By the time the series began in 1974, Bosley was already a respected stage and film actor, known for his professionalism rather than stardom. But behind Howard Cunningham's calm authority was a man who had spent decades fighting for recognition in an industry that rarely rewarded quiet reliability. Bosley was not a heartthrob, not a headline maker, and not a celebrity driven by hype. His success came slowly, built on consistency rather than spectacle. While Happy Days finally brought him mainstream recognition, it also confined him to a narrow image he would struggle to escape. As the years passed, Bosley found himself increasingly defined by paternal roles. Casting directors no longer saw range, only reassurance. Though he continued working steadily after Happy Days, the roles lacked depth and challenge. The industry that had finally embraced him now offered repetition instead of growth. Behind the scenes, Bosley faced health issues that worsened with age, quietly, eroding his strength while he maintained a composed public image. Through the 1990s and early 2000s, his health declined further. Diabetes and complications weakened him, and work opportunities slowed. The applause faded gradually, replaced by silence. There was no dramatic fall, only the slow disappearance that so many character actors endure. He carried the weight of being remembered primarily for one role, despite a lifetime of disciplined work. Tom Bosley died on October 19, 2010, at the age of 83 from complications related to a staph infection. His death marked a tragic irony. A man who portrayed America's most dependable father spent his final years largely out of the spotlight, quietly fading away. His legacy is one of dignity shadowed by the reality that Hollywood rarely honors longevity with care. Marion Ross was born on October 25, 1928 in Watertown, Minnesota. She was 45 years old when she took on the role of Marion Cunningham, the warm, compassionate mother whose gentle presence helped define the emotional tone of Happy Days. Before the show, Ross had spent nearly 2 decades in Hollywood, appearing in dozens of small roles, often uncredited, waiting for recognition that rarely came. Yet beneath Marion Cunningham's nurturing smile was a woman deeply familiar with disappointment. Ross had endured years of rejection, typecasting, and professional invisibility. Success came late, And when it finally arrived, it arrived in a form that limited her range. While audiences adored her, the industry continued to see her as a single archetype, the perfect television mother. As the series continued, Ross faced a personal life marked by strain. Her marriage deteriorated under the weight of career demands and emotional distance, eventually ending in divorce. Behind the scenes, she balanced professional stability with private loneliness. The role that brought security did not bring fulfillment. Instead, it reinforced a narrow image that followed her long after the show ended. Through the decades that followed, Ross continued acting, but always in the shadow of Marion Cunningham. Opportunities existed, but transformation did not. Hollywood celebrated her legacy while quietly restricting her future. Aging in the industry brought new challenges. Roles diminished, visibility faded, and relevance became conditional. Though Marion Ross is still alive, her story reflects a heartbreaking truth of classic television fame. A woman who waited decades for success spent the rest of her career unable to move beyond it. Her life stands as a reminder that delayed recognition can be just as limiting as early fame, and that being beloved does not protect against quiet emotional loss. Anson William Heimlich was born on September 25, 1949 in Los Angeles, California. He was 25 years old when he stepped into the role of Patsy Weber, the loyal, sensitive best friend whose awkward charm provided balance to Happy Days. At the time, Williams was an emerging actor, eager to establish himself in an industry known for its unpredictability. But behind Patsy's easygoing presence was growing unease. As the show progressed, Williams noticed his role slowly shrinking. Storylines shifted away from him, and screen time diminished. While others rose to iconic status, he remained on the margins, quietly realizing that fame within an ensemble did not guarantee longevity beyond it. As the years passed and the show ended, Williams faced a difficult transition. Acting roles became scarce, and financial uncertainty followed. Legal disputes over merchandising profits drained both money and morale, leaving him disillusioned with the industry that once promised stability. The weight of fighting studios added emotional exhaustion to an already fragile career path. Through the 1980s and 1990s, Williams pivoted toward directing, finding moderate success but never regaining the recognition he once had. The applause he remembered faded into memory, replaced by behind-the-camera work that kept him employed but largely unseen. The shift was survival, not triumph. Though Anson Williams remains alive, his story carries a tragic undercurrent. A man who helped define one of television's most comforting eras spent decades adjusting to life after relevance. His journey reflects a painful reality of Hollywood, where friendship on screen does not translate to security off it, and where success can quietly slip away without warning. Donny Most was born on August 8, 1953 in Brooklyn, New York. He was 21 years old when he stepped into the role of Ralph Malph, the loud, impulsive jokester whose exaggerated confidence masked deep insecurity. Ralph was written as comic relief, a character designed to be laughed at rather than understood. At the time Happy Days premiered in 1974, Most was a young actor eager to break into mainstream television, unaware that this role would both define and limit his future. But behind Ralph's constant jokes was a young man quietly struggling with typecasting from the very beginning. The character's exaggerated behavior locked Most into a narrow image that casting directors found difficult to separate from the actor himself. While audiences enjoyed the humor, the industry failed to see depth beyond it. Even during the height of the show's success, Most sensed that his opportunities outside Happy Days were shrinking rather than expanding. As the years passed, this realization became devastating. When Happy Days ended in 1984, Most faced a harsh reality shared by many sitcom actors: sudden irrelevance. Acting offers slowed to a trickle, and the comedic persona that once brought applause now worked against him. Hollywood's interest shifted elsewhere, leaving him to confront a career that no longer had direction. Financial uncertainty followed, accompanied by the emotional weight of being forgotten while the show itself lived on in reruns. Through the late 1980s and 1990s, Most attempted to reinvent himself, turning toward music, stage work, and smaller acting roles. These efforts brought artistic fulfillment, but little public recognition. The industry that once relied on his presence offered no roadmap for life after fame. His identity, so tightly bound to Ralph Malph, became difficult to shed, forcing him to rebuild quietly, away from the spotlight. Donny Most survived where many did not, but his story carries a tragic undertone. A man who helped define one of television's most beloved ensembles spent decades living in the shadow of a single character. His journey reflects the cruel irony of sitcom fame, where laughter fades, recognition disappears, and those who made millions smile are left to navigate obscurity alone. Albert Francis Molinaro was born on June 24, 1919, in Kenosha, Wisconsin. He was in his mid-50s when he played Al Delvecchio, the kind-hearted owner of Arnold's Drive-In, the social heart of Happy Days. Before the show, Molinaro had already found success on television, but Happy Days cemented him as a symbol of warmth and familiarity rather than range. But behind Al's gentle smile was a man slowly being locked into one image. The role brought stability, but limited opportunity. As years passed, Molinaro became synonymous with friendly background presence, a label that followed him long after the show ended. When work slowed, so did visibility. Al Molinaro died on October 30th, 2012, at the age of 93. His death closed the chapter on a career remembered fondly, yet quietly. A reminder that comfort roles often fade softly into history, unnoticed by the industry that once depended on them. Scott Vincent James Baio was born on September 22, 1960, in Brooklyn, New York. He was just 14 years old when he became Chachi Arcola, Fonzie's younger cousin, introduced as a charming extension of an already iconic character. At the time, Baio was positioned as the next big teen star. Yet, beneath the rising fame were pressures that escalated quickly. Success came early, expectations mounted, and personal boundaries blurred. As the years passed, Baio's public image became tangled in controversy and polarizing opinions that overshadowed his acting work. Though still alive, Baio's career never recovered its early momentum. His story reflects how early stardom can magnify personal flaws, turning youthful promise into long-term isolation from mainstream success. Roz Kelly was born on July 29, 1943, in Mount Vernon, New York. She played Pinky Tuscadero, the tough, defiant biker girlfriend who briefly challenged Fonzie's dominance. Her role stood out sharply against the show's wholesome tone. But that boldness came at a cost. Kelly's outspoken personality reportedly clashed with producers, leading to her abrupt departure. After Happy Days, her career collapsed almost entirely, and she disappeared from the spotlight. Roz Kelly died on November 12, 2018, at the age of 75. Her ending was a cruel twist, a woman remembered for strength whose real-life career was cut short by an industry intolerant of defiance. Kathy Silvers was born on August 7, 1961, in New York City. She portrayed Jenny Piccolo, Joni's best friend, a character often referenced more than seen. While minor, the role placed Silvers within the Happy Days universe at a young age. As adulthood arrived, Silvers struggled to transition into sustained acting work. The industry's attention faded and opportunities dwindled. Like many young actresses, she found that early exposure did not guarantee longevity. Her story mirrors dozens of forgotten performers, present during television's golden moments, then quietly erased as trends shifted. Linda Goodfriend was born on October 1, 1953, in New York City. She played Lori Beth Allen, Richie Cunningham's love interest and eventual wife. The role brought visibility, but little long-term security. After Happy Days, Goodfriend stepped away from acting, choosing a private life over continued rejection. Her departure was not dramatic, but it was permanent, a silent exit from an industry that offered diminishing returns. Her legacy is one of quiet withdrawal rather than collapse, showing that sometimes survival means walking away before damage deepens. Noriyuki Pat Morita was born on June 28, 1932, in Ileton, California. He played Arnold, the original owner of Arnold's Drive-In. Though a minor role, it marked an important step in his career. Yet behind the humor was a man battling alcoholism, health issues, and typecasting. Though Morita later achieved global fame, his life remained shadowed by addiction and physical decline. Pat Morita died on November 24, 2005, at the age of 73. His story stands as one of delayed recognition paired with prolonged suffering. Nearly 50 years later, Happy Days still plays like a warm memory. Bright smiles, simple lessons, and a world that felt safe for 30 minutes at a time. But the lives behind those smiles were far more fragile than the stories they told on screen. Fame brought applause, not protection. Success delivered pressure, not peace. Some carried silent illnesses. Others were left behind when the laughter stopped. A few escaped the trap, many did not. What remains is a sobering contrast between nostalgia and reality, between comfort television and the human cost of making it. These were real people whose struggles never made the script, whose pain played out far from the studio lights. Which journey stayed with you the most? Share your thoughts below and subscribe as we continue uncovering the forgotten truths behind Hollywood's most beloved legends.